So do you think that if you arranged all the atoms and physical structures of the human body and brain and create a person, it would suddenly come alive?
So, do you know about qualia? It's this subjective feeling that you have from your senses, like the redness of the evening sky or the tanginess of the grape, which no matter how hard you try, you can't perfectly induce the same feeling in another person.
Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness.
In the future, I can imagine a device which can record my physical experiences, like how it felt to swim from my neural structure, and then transfer it to another person as is, so they can experience it as is.
Descartes, I think, therefore I am. What do you think this means? Is thought consciousness?
Hey, Curious Peer, this is Suraj.
And I'm Pratham.
On this channel, we discuss our thoughts and have a deep talk on an intriguing topic and see where the conversation takes us. So, for this episode, we wanted to touch upon a post that we made recently, and it was about a thought experiment and it was called Philosophical Zombie. After making that post, it got both of us thinking a lot and we wanted to debate about it. So, I'll just brief about the essence of that post and we can get started. So basically, as I said, it's a thought experiment called Philosophical Zombie, and it's basically imagining a hypothetical being that's physically identical and indistinguishable from a normal person, but doesn't have conscious experience or sentience, if you will. So, for example, if you poke a philosophical zombie with a sharp object, it would inwardly not feel any pain, but outwardly it would behave exactly as if it did feel pain. So it would lash out, or it would, express how painful it was, all that, but it just won't feel that pain exactly. So this was what the philosophical zombie thought experiment was, and yeah, Pratham, tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, but Suraj, I wanted to ask, what is the conclusion from that? I was trying to understand a little bit, and I think I got some part of it. But what is the point of the thought experiment? If you can kind of summarize that, and I'll just see if it makes sense to what I try to understand from it.
Okay, so as far as I know, even I don't claim to be an expert in this, but as far as I know, I think the summary of it, the essence of it is basically stating that there is something called as consciousness or say sentience. So if I can program a humanoid robot with all these things, and it would be a philosophical zombie, so I'll poke it, it'll, express how painful it was, it would, flitch, it will do all that, but it just won't feel it. So there, through this experiment, through this thought experiments, I think the people who came up with it, they're trying to understand or prove that there is something called as consciousness also, because that robot or that philosophical zombie it just doesn't have it. So even if we can physically program all these things, it'll just be physical, but we have something more than that, which is probably not physical, and that itself is consciousness. That's what I gleaned from it.
Okay, so you mean to say part of our consciousness would be the experience and other things that we take away,
Yeah.
and the hypothetical world of. Okay, so what I understood from it, I think something similar, but basically I particularly focused on the last part of our post, which said that how do you not know that other people are philosophical zombies, or how do you know that they're not philosophical zombies? And so, okay, I'll try to summarize what I got from it and let me know what you think.
Okay.
So basically, it's something like what you said, and if there is a philosophical zombie, and it will react the way a normal person would. So in this world, since consciousness is subjective and I just know what I'm thinking and it's private and I can't probe really into your mind much or any other person's, how do I not know that everybody else around me is a philosophical zombie? But let's understand the fact that, okay, because no person would enjoy a special position in this world, and assuming everything is equal, we know that everybody is not a philosophical zombie and there is a real consciousness behind every person. Hence, it must be more than just reactions and intellect and how you are perceived through other people. So it must be your experience and sentience also, which doesn't seem to manifest physically. At least that's what I kind of got from it. Does that make sense?
Okay. I didn't get one sentence that you mentioned, which was as every person would not like to have a special preference, something like that.
No. I just mean
Huh.
like let's say we center the argument around me. How do I
Hmm.
not know all the people around me are actually people, or are they just philosophical zombies? But that wouldn't be the case because no person would enjoy a special position in this world, right? Like how no part of
Why?
space enjoys a central position, like every because it's infinite. And so like why would it be the case that I'm special and I am a human with consciousness, but but it could be the case that everybody else is just a philosophical zombie? That wouldn't happen. Like we know that people are people with consciousness.
No, but that's the question. Like, how do you know? Let's say if we were living if we believe that simulation theory,
Okay.
and we're just being simulated in an huge supercomputer by some alien life probably, and we are just a character, and probably I'm the only real character, and the other people, even you or everyone else around me, they are just programs written in a way that has to react exactly like I would do.
Right. Like, so what I was trying to explain over there is something analogous to the cosmological principle. Are you familiar with
Hmm.
that?
Is it that no space is, I mean, nothing,
Central.
there is no center. Yeah, every part of it is the center of
Yeah,
the
like no
universe.
place in the universe enjoys a special position over the others. Like this is the center around which everything is balanced, or there's equal space on this
Yeah.
side and this side. And similarly for a person, right? Like why would one person enjoy a special position over all the others? Like that's what I was trying to explain there.
But again, that's just using our reasoning or our sense of morality and imposing it on the universe. Yeah,
Probably,
it
yeah. I
makes
mean, there
sense
is
for
no
it.
real
Yeah.
way to, yeah, there's no real way to
Exactly.
kind of know
Yeah.
it. But let's
Hmm.
say it is. I think that's what that
Hmm.
argument is trying to do with that thought experiment. That there's more than just the physicality of it, and there is something that is beyond the physical, that is consciousness.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that's the argument that I buy into. That's the essence of the philosophical zombie experiment. But the question that we later posed in that post was that how do you know everyone else isn't? You mentioned that there is no real way of knowing, but that itself is the question or the thought that I wanted to induce or incite in everyone else's mind. Like there is actually no way of knowing. We can just debate or assume and impose our morality on the universe, but yeah, in the end of the day, you can't really know.
That's true. But I think I find some solace in that point about no person enjoying a special position in
Hmm.
the universe.
Hmm.
But then, like, I mean, since you said you agree, let me ask you this. Because I thought you might be on the other side of that argument. Like, so do you think that if we arrange all atoms as exactly as it is in your brain or in your body right now and produce a
Hmm.
physical, indistinguishable being, do you
Hmm.
feel would it suddenly come alive? Is it as conscious as you, or is it lacking something, or is it a philosophical zombie?
Okay. So first off, when I said I agree to it, like I meant that I agree to the fact that this is why the philosophical zombie experiment, uh, I mean, that's the conclusion of it. Basically, they're trying to prove that there is consciousness and it's not
Okay,
just
okay.
all physical. So
Hmm.
I think that that's the conclusion. It doesn't mean that I agree that there's
Okay, sorry.
consciousness. Okay, no worries. So yeah, so that's one. And regarding the question that you posed, if we can just arrange all the atoms in exact configuration as me or you, would we become alive? I feel yes, we would. And medically, at least the experiments or the examples that I have seen where people, they are clinically dead or like everyone considers them dead. So actually, I have a short story for this. I think it fares well with the example that I want to make. So basically, there were these two couples who I think were in trekking in Siberia or some forest. I'm not sure. So apparently, they were trekking and the weather was all good, but suddenly there was a huge hailstorm and they had to go back and they were trying to take shelter under the rock, but it still wasn't enough for them. And apparently the woman, she froze, and like he wasn't getting any response from her. And then he actually thought she was dead, and when he checked her pulse, like she was like there was no pulse on her, and she wasn't breathing. And then after some time, the hailstorm, it stopped, and then the rescue helicopters, it all came, and they airlifted them. So then they brought her to the hospital, and as soon as she was brought, like she was declared dead. And yeah, and rightfully so, she wasn't breathing, or she didn't have a pulse on her. And then one of the doctors over there, he had apparently seen a similar case to this, and he kind of expected it to be a case of hypothermia, and he just wanted to do a small experiment. So what he did was he, laid her down, then took all the blood away from her, sent it to a specialized machine which takes the blood in, and like it warms it up just a teeny tiny bit, and then it just pumps the blood back to the body. So they did that, and apparently after, I don't know, few minutes, I guess, she was breathing again. She didn't like recover completely like in the movies, but she was breathing again. She was alive at least. She had a pulse, and it was good. Then after a few days, she recovered and she was brought home. So these sort of incidents, like even I guess even you would have seen in movies and all that, they use defibrillators, and even when they've lost the pulse completely, they bring them back. And I have heard that you can start that heart like using adrenaline or whatever that is, like even after a few minutes after they are considered dead. So I feel, yeah, it is a physical mechanism that goes inside our body. If it stops, you cease to exist, and if it doesn't, or if you can somehow create it exactly as how the body works, you can, yeah, basically create life. So that's what I think.
I mean, I think that example, there's no denying that there's a physical component to it, but I don't think
Mhm.
that example proves, I mean, that line of reasoning proves that there is only a physical component to it.
Yeah, it
Do you get
doesn't.
what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't prove that, and I don't think anything even proves that there is a spiritual component or a supernatural component to it also. Like, I'm saying that there's no proof for either one of them.
Yeah. That's true.
Hmm.
Okay, but like going back to consciousness,
Hmm.
I also wanted to kind of see what you think about the distinction of being conscious versus being awake. Because usually, at least what I've come across, many people may not make that distinction, but there are certain folks that try to emphasize that distinction between consciousness and wakefulness.
Uh, I I deliberately choose to avoid these arguments or these debates because whether it's me or even you or whoever does this argument, no one knows what consciousness is. So trying to debate the difference between being conscious and being awake without knowing what one of them means, like I don't know if we'll ever end
That's
up in
true.
a.
That's true. But I
Hmm.
mean, just like what you feel instinctively. Do you feel like they are the same thing, or do you think that consciousness is different, or maybe more than just being awake?
I don't even buy into consciousness, so for me, it's just one thing. It's like being awake. If you want to call that as consciousness, go ahead. Like I don't want to get into that semantics. But for me, like being awake or so being alive, basically, is just one thing.
Okay. But you also mentioned like if you arrange the atoms, you do feel that it would come alive. But I want to also kind of run this analogy by you that I had come across like some time back, where someone was explaining like you can think of your body, like you can think of your life mechanism as a machine kind of, and your physical body is like the hardware. I think we also spoke about this some time
Yeah.
back, but like your physical body is like the hardware, and your mind or the human mind is like the software, and your life energy or consciousness or what we call as prana in
Hmm.
traditional terms is supposed to be the electricity or the power that runs it. So if we just arrange the atoms, like what do you think about that analogy? Because it would only be like assembling the hardware. It won't come alive until the power runs through it to actually make it function.
Hmm. I guess the power running through it is, say, the heart pumping the blood going to the cells doing its thing because the blood is, they're getting oxygen and all that from the blood, all the nutrients that it requires. And the brain has that electrical impulse, even like I guess even the brain runs on electricity, like our entire body does. Um, so yeah, you can like we can measure those exact microvolts or millivolts, whatever our brain runs on. We can measure that, and I feel if all the physical mechanisms are happening just right, that itself is the power, and there's no other thing like
But
outside
how would
of
it
it.
start, right? Like, how would the heart start suddenly just by arranging it? You feel it would.
Yeah, like I I can't totally comment on this because I'm not I haven't read biology or I'm a doctor. Actually, I had this very question to one of my cousin who's a doctor. I had asked her like at which point in the baby's development in the womb do you consider that it has life? Like it will be an egg initially and then at some point it will be a baby. But at what point in that stage would you consider that it has life?
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah. And
And that could go into concepts of so many things, and like abortion or euthanasia or something. Probably a whole other episode, but
yeah, yeah,
it's pretty
no,
interesting to think about.
that's true. And actually, she gave a proper answer to it. Like there is something that happens biologically. Like for now, I totally forgotten that, but there is something that happens biologically, and after that point, like we consider that it's living, basically. So maybe it's just some threshold that medical community has come up with, or it actually is after that point, your internal organs or the main organs, at least they've developed enough to, you know, start the motion of your body, the internal mechanisms
Hmm.
of your body. So that's what I think.
Interesting because, like,
Hmm.
yeah, because I was reading this book. I think I was reading that book on death,
Hmm.
and yeah, he was just explaining how the process of life coming into a baby's body as well as the process of death happening is like a process. Like it expands over a certain amount of time, and there's different things happening. And
Hmm.
I mean, we can debate whether it's true or not, but just to provide that perspective, it's like it takes a certain span of time and there's different things happening, so like there's no one point that you can point out that okay, this is the point that this person is alive, or this is the point that this person's dead.
Hmm.
So even when you mentioned that example of that woman being revived after skiing and being rescued and stuff,
Hmm.
at least I was thinking in the perspective of okay, during that process it still hadn't reached a point where it was completely unrecoverable,
Hmm.
and the body was not able to function, and the process of death had not completed yet, and during that if it's revived then the body is still livable, like it can still be occupied and lived in. At
Okay.
least that's what I was thinking, but interesting.
Yeah. Actually, one more thing is to support your argument, there is something called as qualia. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, but like I don't think I got my head around it completely, like can you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, to discuss that, I think we need to discuss about another thought experiment called Mary's room. Have you heard about that?
Okay. No.
Okay, so this is a thought experiment which is probably not intuitive, and many people they might not get it at first glance. I didn't get it. I was still trying to figure out what it actually says, but yeah, I'll try my best to make you understand. So this is what it is. So we imagine a person called Mary, and she's a brilliant scientist, and for whatever reason, she's forced to investigate the world from a black and white room. So she's confined to that room, and there's a black and white television monitor, and she has access to all the information that she needs, but there is literally no color at all. Like in her entire life, she has never seen any color. Okay.
Okay.
So, and we'll suppose that she knows neurophysiology and all the physical information there is. She knows all the things that is there to know about what goes on when we see, say, tomatoes or the sky and use terms like red or blue. And she knows the exact wavelength combinations that forms from the sky stimulate the retina and how that process happens. She knows everything that there is to know about color and how we
The
perceive color.
physicality.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she knows everything. Now Mary walks out into that world. She gets out of that box. Now the million-dollar question is, what will happen when Mary is released from her black and white room? Will she learn anything new now about color? Will
Right.
she has some amount of information about color, like basically everything there is to know. Will she learn anything more?
Whether that experience has any value to it or not.
Exactly. So I felt another example to, discuss the same thing, which probably is, I don't know, for somewhat easier to grasp, which is sort of similar to philosophical zombie, is let's say there's an alien who comes to Earth, and that alien doesn't have pain receptors. It has never felt any pain, and it never will. It's physically impossible for it to feel pain. But it comes to Earth, it studies everything that there is to know about how we perceive pain, like what happens, the stimulus and the response. It knows everything. It can crack a biology exam also. So it knows everything there is to know. But in spite of that, it never actually feels it. So that sense of feeling is called qualia. Even in the Mary's room experiment, if Mary actually learns anything, for that matter, anything new after she gets out and sees the color, that's called qualia. So the things that are outside the physical and the things that we just probably feel, that's what qualia is.
Okay. Makes sense.
Hmm.
So, like, isn't that an argument for the metaphysical to exist? That there is something called consciousness and there is value in subjective experiences. I mean, I don't know if I would call them as subjective also, because we do agree on what the color red is or what other things are, even though different people might perceive it slightly differently.
Hmm.
So it's almost objective in a way, and there is that reality. So I guess like you agree with some. I mean, obviously none of us are sure, but
Hmm.
do you feel that that is a valid argument, or
For me, I feel after reading this about Mary's room and the other experiments, similar thought experiments, it initially for me, I felt that, okay, yeah, I mean, there has to be something that she would learn more. Like she will literally see the colors. That has to add to something. And even the alien, like if finally he could feel pain somehow, he would learn something new about pain. I felt that it is a limitation in our language and limitation in what we can express, and probably nothing more than that. So I don't think that just because we cannot, quantify that information yet in our language and the tools that we have. See, even what if Mary learns something new, it's still debatable. Like it's not proved that yeah, she will learn something new. It's just a thought experiment, and there's no conclusive answer to it if she learns or not.
but it seems like she would,
Yeah,
like if we think about it, yeah.
exactly. But there are many very strong arguments that she won't learn anything new. And well, if she did learn something new, it is only because of, yeah, as I said, the limitation of our own language and the way that we express feelings or whatever it is. Maybe at some point in the future, we will come up with, say, some telepathic communication.
But more than like I mean, it also kind of brings into the question whether your senses are limited in a way of actually experiencing everything you're experiencing. Like you may be taking in much more information than just, the sight, the
Ah,
sound, the taste,
yeah.
the feel, and the smell. So, and because all of them are in a way outward facing,
Hmm.
they kind of gather the world, and you cannot really turn them inward and see what you are experiencing. You may not be able to physically describe them, but only experience certain things. For example, like you can apply the same logic to swimming also, right? I can describe all parameters of swimming and what muscles have to be moved, and I can try to describe how it would feel with the temperature of the water or how it
Hmm.
feels brushing against your skin or something like that. But until you finally actually jump into the pool and swim, you
Hmm.
might be missing out on a whole lot. And I don't think, I mean, I would disagree on the fact that it's just a limitation of those parameters being assigned or quantified or the language describing it. I do think that there is some value in the experience of it, and that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes life, that it's more than just the physical description of things or the physical knowing. Like, there's a difference between knowledge and knowing it. Like, knowing it is by experience, knowing something, whereas you can read it in a book, but you still haven't experienced it. And that dimension of experiencing it is what I hold unique to life. That something is living is it can experience it and, you know, have that perception or memory stored inside it.
Okay. But I can, for that, I can imagine an instrument like this is already in development. Have you heard about the company called Neuralink? It's Elon
I think so,
Musk's.
yeah.
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 So yeah, they're trying to perfect those microsurgeries inside the brain. They can pinpoint the exact location where maybe our speech, like the region of speech and all that. So in the future, like I can imagine, let's say, um, a device which it, it records the or it can transfer the feeling of swimming, say from my mind to yours. Like I have swim like
Quantify.
huh, not quantify, like
I mean, like a unit of experience in a way.
exactly, yeah, it can transfer that experience. So I know what swimming feels like, and I have swum before, and let's say you haven't, and I can transfer that to you in your brain. So even in my brain, even though I'm not currently swimming, I kind of probably know how it felt only because of the memories of that day inside me, right? So what if I can transfer that part of my knowledge in my brain to you through that device?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? Whether finally, like, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, they have cut open the brain and everything, and we know the exact physical structure and how it's connected and everything. And yet, it isn't still explicable as to how it functions or how your mind functions. And, like, a lot of part of it is still a gray area, right? We just know
Yeah.
the boundary, you can almost say, like, where the signal originates and which part is being used for what, but we still don't know the why or the how.
Hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, if that gets answered, then probably we'll be able to
Yeah.
argue that point.
For that, I feel I'm pretty sure it will be answered. Like, see, because we cannot answer it at this point, it's not a proof that there is something metaphysical or,
Yeah, that's true. That's
yeah.
true.
So maybe just this is where we currently are in the technology, and probably 50 years down the line, we will have answered much more than what we currently do.
But you know, now I find myself like I had like a few things to kind of try to run by you, but
Yeah.
since we kind of got off that consciousness, I don't know if we'll put this as part of the recording. But since you said like you don't like talking about the consciousness because we don't know what it is and you don't believe in it also, I can't go on to those tangents at all that I thought that I could run by you. Like it sounds really, there's no point of it now.
Okay.
But you know what? It's not just that. Now I'm thinking, in a way, I feel like by saying that, or by, you know, if let's say we take on that position, it almost becomes like a shield that we're blocking ourselves. Like right now, I can't pitch that to you and see what you think about it because you've closed yourself to that possibility by dismissing it in a way. Do you get what I mean to say?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but that is only because what would I even have? I wouldn't have any data to even co-
That's
correctly
okay,
infer
but
anything about
I
it.
mean, we've purposely picked a topic that doesn't have like it is an open-ended thing. So what we have is the thoughts and the thought experiments and what we think it could be, or some pointers or proofs along this direction or that direction. Like you mentioned that Mary's room
Okay.
or the Switzerland story or something. You get what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So we've chosen this topic knowing that there's no data or proof or any solid answer here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I mean?
Okay, sure. Makes sense. Yeah, that
So
makes
that
sense.
becomes like a disclaimer in the beginning that okay, yeah, we know that there's, we're just trying to explore the.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, it makes sense that I've blocked myself from it, and like I'm not willing to go down that conversation because I do not have any data about consciousness using which I can infer statements or deduce any meaningful thing from it. So that's the reason I stray away from such conversation because I feel like it doesn't lead anywhere. But I guess, yeah, for the purposes of debate or like philosophical discussion, it's good to engage in such conversation, and hopefully we can, at least eliminate few things which isn't consciousness, even if we do not get what is consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as a humanity as a whole, we don't have any data. If we're
Hmm.
going in, like we're furrowing into this topic and discussing it, means that we'll be considering like random half data points or stories or, you know what I mean, like people's experiences and trying to
Hmm.
discuss and trying to come up with something that it won't obviously objectively prove or disprove, but it'll just kind of like incline or align us in a certain way. I wanted to run this one thought by you, and it's actually by a certain person. I'm going to reveal that after the quote, but okay, so it goes like, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. And
Okay.
this is by Max Planck, the father of the quantum theory.
Ooh.
Yeah, I knew that would surprise you like a little bit.
I was pretty sure you were gonna say Albert Einstein and
No, but he also has a quote that's similar. I haven't made a note of it, or I don't know it at the top of my head. But his explanation that there is a cosmic consciousness, and that's what he regards as closest to God, or he regarded as closest to God. And I think we can get into that a little later. But what do you think about this?
Hmm. Again, if you start an argument with consciousness is the primary thing, and then all the matter is derived from that, and there is no, you can't go behind consciousness. Like if that is the first statement, then we are trying to deduce something from it. Then of course we logically cannot, because it says so in the first statement that we cannot go back behind the consciousness. But I also feel that because it's coming from Max Planck, or say even Einstein, like you mentioned, like he has another quote about consciousness, uh, there might be some credibility to it. Like we tend to think that, okay, if people are brilliant in this area, they have to know what they're talking about regarding everything else. I do not buy into that actually. It's most likely that they might be true, but it's not a proof of their expertise in other
That's
aspects.
true. That's
If they're
true.
expert in, yeah, physics, that's one thing. But yeah, definitely when I hear like people like Max Planck, Einstein, like coming up with those statements, I on any given day I cannot beat Einstein or Max Planck ever. So yeah, they should be knowing about what they're talking, and it definitely warrants um, discussion on it, or even just taking a look at it.
Yeah, I think it kind of makes you rethink a little bit and, maybe stress on
Yeah,
it a little bit
definitely.
more. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I actually wanted to stress on this one point that we might be getting caught in the grammar or the semantics of it. Like, uh, I don't know what the actual definition of consciousness is. Like, if I Google, I probably will get it. But I kind of know what generally they're trying to define it as. And I might have a different, or I'm saying me, but like scientists, or they might have a different word for it. Like just the functioning of the brain, maybe that itself is the consciousness, or I'm not sure. But I feel there definitely is overlap, and we probably just get stuck with just the semantics. Like when I hear the conversations or debates about God versus science and all that, it actually is not God versus science. That doesn't make sense for me. It's science versus faith, because science is like it's a way of thinking. It's not a thing which is devoid of God
Makes
or nothing
sense.
like that. Scientific, yeah, it's just a way of thinking, and faith is a way of thinking. Science requires proof to believe something. Faith just wants you to believe something. And yeah, you can compare those ways of thinking. But science versus God for me is no, I mean, there is no common basis to compare with.
Yeah, that's like an offshoot that probably shouldn't go into now, but I get what you meant to say there.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
okay, like
yeah.
let me run this by you. I also came across when I was just, reading a little bit. I've also come across this concept of panpsychism, which says that everything is conscious, like all machines or all beings are conscious. So pan meaning all and psychism meaning
Hmm.
conscious. So in the sense like, yeah, even a rat is conscious, even a fly is conscious, even a grasshopper is conscious. But obviously there's a difference of the degree of consciousness. How conscious is an animal is less compared to how conscious a person is. And depending on the complexity of that organism structure, is the, directly proportional to how conscious that animal is. So just with whatever is our understanding of consciousness right now, I mean, we obviously won't be able to fix a definition. But what do you think about that statement? Like, do you think that even we could call animals as being conscious or having a certain degree of consciousness?
Yeah, actually, even like I'll answer it by asking you a question.
Okay.
Do you feel that there are different degrees of consciousness in animals, or and if you feel that, like, how do you know that it has any less conscious than we do? Or I can imagine this sort of a play where, let's say you have a cow over there, like in the back of your house, and it will be thinking that, okay, this idiot thinks that I don't get calculus.
No, but
Or
for the
something like, I
simple
don't understand
reason,
philosophical zombie.
yeah, like I do agree. I mean,
Sorry.
uh, from at least instinctually, I do feel that, yeah, it is true. There is a different degree of consciousness. Simply, we can look at what humans have been able to achieve, right, compared to what animals can do. That itself can be proof that there is a higher functionality or higher ability. Whether we call that a better degree of consciousness or not, that we can argue. But I probably would attribute it to that we are more conscious than animals. That's why humans have been able to achieve so much more on this planet than animals. Like, that would be one simple refute that I would offer.
And I would just tell that it probably is the consciousness, not the right word for it, and it's just intelligence for it. Even if you take a look at, say, a chimp's DNA, like that's our closest relative, it's just 2% difference, different than what our DNA is. And with just the 2% difference, like we are like leaps and bounds ahead of it. So, and I feel it's just intelligence. And even with the understanding or the definition of consciousness that I am privy to, I don't think it's the consciousness, but it's actually the intelligence difference
But let
between
me
animals and us.
Okay, let me run this by you. Like, with all the AI and ML and everything going ahead,
Hmm.
we definitely will have machines sooner or later that will be able to be in a certain way, that like the way at least you're describing, much more intelligent than us, right? Anything that is like a
Hmm.
database processing or processing information, drawing conclusions, and uh, offering those conclusions up for whatever implementation, it'll be way
Hmm.
better done by a machine than a human in the next
For
few
sure.
decades, right? Then would you qualify that as being much more intelligent, or like would you say that they are also conscious in a certain way?
If you're talking about just data processing or
But it will be just data
any
processing,
task,
right? They won't be able to do anything like that whole qualia sentience
I
and
have a point
consciousness.
for that, but
Okay.
yeah. So if you first let me tell what AI is. Like if it's just the program that you've written it to do, say just it has to just beat you in chess. That's it. That's all it's programmed to. And like I don't think like it will definitely be better than us, but and it will be definitely be more say intelligent than us, but it won't be conscious or conscious. Uh, I mean the definition of which I am aware of. Yeah, it won't be conscious. But if you talk about there's something called as AGI, artificial general intelligence. So what they're trying to do over there is trying to mimic how we would feel basically. And although many people argue that it's just data processing,
Again,
like
mimicry.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that yeah, it's just data processing at the end of the day, to try to mimic. Like at best, it's gonna become a philosophical zombie and nothing more than that. But I would urge actually each and every one of you, like who's listening to this and like who are interested in this, to read the book called How to Create a Mind by Ray Kurzweil. So he argues that even what we do is nothing but data processing. So he has shown you the entire map of how a thought forms in our mind and like how an AGI, like if we develop one, actually we already have like some amount of basic AGI. So when we develop that, like how it forms a thought or how it comes to a conclusion. It doesn't like what we generally know is okay, we give an input, it gives an output, but because it's programmed to do that. But these AGI machines, it never has seen that sort of an input, and it has never been programmed to do, never been programmed to, know what to do when
It
such
can
an input comes.
it
But it
can
still does
tackle
that.
an
It
unfamiliar
learns.
situation,
Yeah, an
basically.
unfamiliar situation. It learns, and it's learning at a crazy pace.
Yes.
So that's one thing. So that's what he argues, and I don't think I can come anywhere near to what he mentions in that book. So that book is basically um, the entire answer for people who believe that data processing is we don't do data processing. What we do is something else, basically qualia, and what machines do is data processing.
But do you think that finally, at the end of that, will those machines be
Mhm.
able to invent stuff like humans have invented better than us? Do you think that will happen?
Surprisingly, they've already done it. So there's this TED Talk, which is I think 5 years back, where a machine has created a chamber for an airplane, a Boeing's 777. So they have, I think, already utilized that in that Boeing. So what it did was they gave all the schematics, or like they trained the machine with all the data sets that they had with, say, CAD models, and how a structure should be developed, and what would be considered as strong, and all that, aerodynamics, all the data they fed. And whenever they want to, okay, I want this type of an airplane which this much strength, which with all this, even if it has never encountered that, because of what it already knows, it tries to come up with a whole new design, and it's the design that we never can even think of. Like there are holes, like there are hollow sections in that, where no human would ever come up with that, but it has developed that, and it is actually the strongest, uh, with that fewer materials that you can use. So it's already doing that, and I think like decades later we definitely would be there where it probably has what we consider as sentience.
I mean, I think that's where I probably disagree. But then, like that whole argument is what makes me think that there's more than just the physical. Like where you said that there's only a 2% difference, and yet look at the difference in our
Hmm.
achievements. And there was one more point that you mentioned, which I forgot now. But that's what makes me feel that there is a degree of consciousness, and that's why there is a difference. And I don't know. I probably disagree that it will be able to.
Will ever be able to
No, in the sense that
create a sentient being.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Like I feel that you won't be able to capture that consciousness in the machine. That's probably my thinking. But it also like kind of reminds me, like what you were saying, also reminded me of that quote by Descartes, which is pretty famous, right? I think, therefore I am. So do you feel
Hmm.
like that is the basis of consciousness, thoughts, and do you think that that encompasses it? There's nothing more to it because you said like what we do is also just database processing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I guess it in a way encompasses that. Like, I just think, and whatever thinking is data processing, maybe at a very, very advanced level. And that's what makes me realize my own existence, which is maybe the I am part.
Interesting, because like I mean there is this other alternative line of thought that says that thinking is just one aspect of our
Hmm.
intelligence and our intellect. Like it's not the whole thing. That's why consciousness comes in as being that other part of it, which we won't be able to use machines to replicate. Like what we do with our
Okay.
thoughts and what we process as information and data, machines will be able to do much better than us in the coming years or coming decades. But what the fundamental difference between us and animals and what makes us human, that high degree of consciousness, that won't be able to be replicated. So that's another, I mean, it's an alternative explanation for the way things are and a prediction of how they will be. So it's not, at least like it opposes the Descartes view, and it's not I think, therefore I am. It's I am, like I
Hmm.
exist, therefore I can think. It's one function of who you are, but like it
That's
attacks the
really nice.
yeah, like it attacks the proposition that thought is everything. It's not everything. It's just that we've glorified it into thought being everything. Oh, like because people were so enslaved with religious and other dogmatic beliefs that people weren't allowed to think freely. It was always a ruler over you or a religious leader or some king or something, and you weren't really allowed to. But suddenly when people started thinking for themselves, and the Industrial Revolution came, and other things have been progressing, and the speed with which it's been happening, people have pushed thought all the way up to the absolute kind of pedestal. I mean, this is that theory and that reasoning. I don't know how much I agree with it. Probably a little bit, because I can see the relevance. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Okay. So that's a really nice way of putting that, which is I am and therefore I can think. That's what it was, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And based on what you explain of that particular line of thinking, I think it's based on the presumption that there is something called as consciousness, and if there is, thinking is secondary and consciousness is the primary.
Not
So yeah,
not
when
necessarily
yeah.
secondary and primary, but they kind of coexist. Like, see, right now, even if you don't think about anything, you will still exist. It's
Mhm.
not like because you stop thinking, you just suddenly die, right?
Yeah, but that's because of my physical body keeping me alive. That's
No,
that's
but then if you
my
say, I think, therefore
uh,
I am, I don't know. I feel like it's a very
uh,
minimalistic kind of a.
now again, like I feel like we're comparing different things where not different things, like things that this Descartes mentioned or he thought differently about. I am probably is just what he's referring to as identity, perhaps.
No, it actually. Okay, I don't recall because it was long back that I researched this, but it's
Hmm.
supposed to be perceived as, therefore I exist. Like, that's how you could take the
Okay.
proof of, okay, there is life, or this thing exists, or because you can think.
Okay. I mean, that I disagree with because I mean, assuming when I'm sleeping, I don't think. Like I should
Exactly,
like.
exactly. I was going to say that, but then I thought you would say there's subconscious, like dreams and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if that is what he's thinking, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that wasn't his initial line of thought, or that wasn't his intention, even though the words were similar. Um, I'm just thinking that it probably is just the identity part. But yeah, I don't know. If it's that, then I don't agree with it.
But the other thing that I said, remember that time that I was saying that there's something else that I wanted to point out that I forgot? Like, what I was thinking
Hmm.
that time is, like, when we think about the physicality of it, or the difference from animals, and you're thinking about that, right? I always kind of also think that the physical universe is like way below 1% of all that there is. Like, the rest of it is like super empty space, and it's like 0.00 something percent is the physical. Like, all of us, planets, stars, everything is very minuscule compared to the larger volume of empty space that is out there. And while now that they are, trying to perceive it as dark matter or dark energy or whatever, I feel like the focus on that is like focusing on the non-physical, because we can only see its effects. Like, in other words, we can only see its footprints. We can't really, at least maybe not right now, maybe we will be later. That's obviously always possible. But I mean to say that at least I'm not gonna probably live as long as, you know as long as it takes to discover that. But so right now, I use that as a kind of like a pusher to make me feel like that there is a non-physical aspect to it, and we should explore it in our lifetime. Do you get what I mean to say? Like, right now, what you
Yeah, yeah.
decide to do with your time will only signify the time that you have. Like, it won't matter in the existential reality of humanity as it is.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because even logically, if you think about it, what you said was right. Like we haven't been able to figure out what that dark matter is. We only know its existence because of the gravity that it gives out, and we can measure that gravity, and we cannot detect which particle. Keep saying we, but scientists cannot detect the particles which are leading to that gravity. And if we talk more about science, like that, there are many theories that it's actually black holes or stuff that we actually like physically cannot see, and that's why it's over there. And it's the stuff near black holes or stuff. It's near the places where there are no starlight to reflect off of it, and that's why we're not seeing that. So I feel like at some day, like we might figure it out, and even I'm not. I mean, I can't say this, but maybe in my lifetime also, we might not be able to figure that out. So yeah, logically, it makes sense to think that there could be another possibility where, um, there is something,
Yeah,
say, which we consider right now as metaphysical, and it's good to at least consider it and take a
yeah.
look at it.
I'm just saying it's worthwhile to explore it. Like, not consider that
Yeah.
it might be true, but at least, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
at
like,
least take a look at it and see
yeah.
what it says. Yeah, that's true. Um, but I feel, for that, I feel there are so many stuff that is considered metaphysical right now that it's almost impossible to get our heads wrapped around all of them.
Yeah.
And it's again like a huge influx of information. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And there are different cultures telling different things. Some are similar, some may be different. So the reason that I do not, you know, kind of want to not spend time over there is because I feel no matter what I know, it will still be a gray area, just like consciousness. I'm okay with debating that, but then at the end of the day, because neither of us know what consciousness actually is, I feel we wouldn't have gotten anywhere except for just our intellectual curiosity. So that's why try to tend to follow science, because at least whatever limited stuff that I know it for sure. So that's how I think. Um, and how I probably want to spend my time.
Makes
Just my
sense. But
opinion of it.
yeah, but like, you also come across certain arguments that sometimes, like, how can you prove a mother's love for a child? You can't, but
Hmm.
it's there. And so, like, material science cannot get to the matters of the heart or explain humanity or consciousness in its entirety. And there's this one more thing that I came across that which said, like a light bulb is capable of shining light on the room around it, but it cannot do that on the power that illuminates it. And that analogy was applied to humans also, saying that we can comprehend the world around us, but not the consciousness that powers us. It cannot be perceived through the senses because they are outwardly projected, and it can't be scientifically explained. So, like, you come across certain, like, what is your thought on that? I'm not trying to like prove or disprove anything, but I just want to kind of
Hmm.
try to see if there's any explanation there, or like,
Yeah, I mean, regarding mother's love and all that thing, see, I'm like almost like most certainly confident that it is like those chemical reactions in your brain, and there are drugs that can impede that or enhance it. So, at least to some extent, we've got that covered.
no, as in the reason
So,
for it, not the, like, not how it's
hmm.
implemented, but the why, or how do you prove it, or do you get what I mean? Like, not
I
not
mean,
the
why a
not the
mother has
chemical
love towards its
basis,
child?
yeah, or like how do you prove it? It can't be proved, or can it? I don't know.
Wait, but what do you want to prove? Like mother has love towards a child, or the reason why mother has love towards a
Both. I
child?
mean, you come across both questions, right?
Okay, so mother has love towards a child probably through chemical reactions when she sees her child amongst other childs. Maybe we can see a spike of some dopamine or whatever. Then the other, like the reason why she likes her child, it's because it's
Genetic.
a part of her, like it came from her and she would have a bias towards it. Like if I create something out of wood and like I see some other random table on the road or in someone else's house, I wouldn't feel anything for that. Like, but because I created this instrument out of wood or a table of my own from wood,
But that can
I know
also be
that I've
questioned.
created it.
Like, just because you created it, why should it have any value to you? Do you get what I mean?
Okay,
Like,
that's a
existentially, you
good
can
line
question
of
that
thought. Yeah.
also. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, let me think about it.
Yeah, but like that's what, like, some of these things that I've come across before, and I
Hmm.
don't know, it just seems like there doesn't seem to be a very logical explanation for some of them, which doesn't mean obviously that there's some kind of other explanation, but it kind of
Hmm.
makes you think about some of that.
Actually, that question is very interesting because I still am thinking about that. Like, I created a table. How is it different from the table that's already there in someone else's house? Just because I created it, why should I have a bias towards it? I was thinking about that, and I think it's again goes back to identity because it has the only difference is like say both are table and both look the same and it has similar dimensions, whatever. The only thing that's difference is one I have created and the other someone else has. So again, I think it gets tied into our identity and shameless marketing. Go watch our identity episode.
Yeah, guys, check it out if you feel like you're interested in that one. Some pretty wacky concepts over there.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So before we close this, I feel that when you mentioned like a while back, when you spoke about there is difference between consciousness between animals and us, and let's say one day we come very close to that artificial general intelligence. I mean, we already have like some of it working over there, and it never will be able to mimic our level of consciousness. But what if they don't have to, like they have a really advanced level of consciousness, just like how our consciousness is different from animals in the same direction, vector. What if their consciousness is different to us, and we won't even be able to comprehend that level of consciousness, just like animals can't comprehend, or I think that they can't comprehend our level of consciousness.
Damn, that's pretty
Just a food
interesting.
for thought.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, it is possible, but
Yeah.
I just think about like, for some reason, I'm always skewed by the thought that it will still be database processing, and but yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, we can't refute that it might actually produce something that's much more, like, much crazier than what humans have been able to produce.
Okay, but I think one thing is like you think that we cannot ever produce such a level or sentience basically, and another thing is I feel it's hugely anthropologically centered, egocentric predicamism
As in?
that like as in like we are the ones like who are special, and
It has to be around what
there is
we.
no
Yeah, I get what you mean.
exactly, the consciousness is what we define it to be.
But you know what? Like, just to end on that thought, I mean, I agree there, and it could probably be a whole new crazy level of what we've created that surpasses what we are capable of. But I just wanted to put this thought that, like, at least from what I've explored and tried to find out about consciousness and about the human experience and the human possibility, is that is the other side of it, which I think you probably don't agree with. But the other side of it is where there's a cosmic consciousness, and your consciousness is like a part of it. And things like meditation and things like yoga and other spiritual practices get you closer to that cosmic consciousness, which will never be true for a machine. No matter what you do, it will be able to produce better than you. It might be able to make better than you, invent, discover, analyze data, and come up with explanations for historical things or whatever. But the other part of you, like not the thoughts, the consciousness part of you, like I agree with you, it can even go off in a different direction, and that might happen. But at least what the alternate thought process suggests is that it'll never be conscious as you in this sense, and the possibilities what are true for a human being, that whole set of possibilities can never be true for a machine, is at least what I've read somewhere. So I thought you might find that interesting. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay, but yeah, I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, I guess again we are like very much biased towards ourselves, like as humans, anthropologically, and we do not want to even probably consider there could be consciousness beyond us, or we could
yeah,
create consciousness beyond us.
it's probably true. That's nice.
Yeah, that's one. But yeah. Man, damn, that was a wild ride though. I think we'll end it here. So feel free to leave your thoughts and comments down below if you're on YouTube, and if you're listening to us on other platforms like Spotify, Google Podcast, or Apple Podcast, you can reach out to us on Instagram at Curiosphere. So thanks for listening in and have a good one.